morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where I love it when actors diversify their portfolio, as in take on other roles in Hollywood besides being in front of the camera. And I particularly like it when they become producers on sometimes projects that they're not involved in. Brad Pitt in particular has really excelled in this way. Moonlight, for instance, comes from his production company. He's really become quite the powerhouse unexpectedly for quote-unquote black film, well, particularly black awards contenders. And Leonardo DiCaprio has also had some success here. And now Margot Robbie hopes to follow in their footsteps. Now, Terminal, her very first producing effort, where she also has a role, doesn't have a lot of heat, but I, Tonya certainly does. And when I first heard and discussed it with you that she was going to make a movie where she played Tonya Harding, I felt it was a good idea from the get-go. And it's pretty obvious what she's trying to do. She's trying to get her own Monster, the film that Patty Jenkins directed. So we have been talking about this film lately because, of course, Patty Jenkins has gone on to direct Wonder Woman. But that's also one of the famous 3 deglamorization roles that won an Oscar for an actress. There's Halle Berry in Monsters Ball, Charlize Theron in Monster, and then also Nicole Kidman when she played Virginia Woolf. It was basically almost 3 in a row, which is why it's so famous in Oscar legend. And now Margot Robbie is hoping to walk the same Oscar path, and it's going to be tough for her to pull off because she's not particularly well known for being a great actress, but neither Nicole Kidman, I think, had some respect. But even all 3 of those actresses weren't particularly well thought of when it comes to acting prowess. Let's just to say they weren't Meryl Streeps, right? They were all very commercial, which is actually where Margot Robbie herself is coming from. So I think that on paper, this is extremely well thought out. But now we finally got to see it in the flesh, or the fat suit, when somebody snapped a pic of Margot Robbie on set the other day, and it was blasted across the internet. And it was picked up, I think, because of Margot Robbie's rising star, because she's so famous for her appearance, and she's going to dramatically alter that for the role, and people are curious to see if she can do it. And then also, of course, because it's a slow news time. But I think that even if it wasn't a slow news period for movie news, this would get a lot of coverage. I think Margot Robbie is in a great place in her career right now, and we'll see if this is the turning point it's meant to be. Even the Today Show picked it up, so that's very, very impressive. So that's also good for its awards chances, which I'm sure, of course, it hopes to be. Because, again, the whole point of this is to win Margot Robbie an Oscar. Sometimes films, that's what they are. Just like Dunkirk for Christopher Nolan. He's like, I want an Oscar. And I think Margot Robbie at least wants to be nominated for an Oscar. And I think, again, very smart career plan. But how do I think that she looks in the suit? I'm not sure. I saw a couple of comments which talked about that she hadn't gone far enough. But I think a lot of that's going to be in the performance. It looks to some degree like she is just wearing a fat suit, and I think that she has to be careful about what happened with Gwyneth Paltrow in the Shallow Hal movie, where she came under fire for putting on a fat suit, being a day visitor in body image issues. Although Margot Robbie has spoken out quite a bit about her own body image issues, even playing roles like Harley Quinn, which I talked about yesterday with how I wish she talked more about the character. But I think that when it comes to Tonya Harding, I think comments like that do make Margot Robbie more relatable. I don't think those comments should go away. I just wish she would also talk about the character. So the question is, what does it mean to Margot Robbie to transform into Tonya Harding? If it's just doing figure skating lessons and putting on a fat suit and having crazy 80s hair, I don't think that's going to quite go the distance. But if she can, I chose this picture of Tonya Harding specifically because you can see that Tonya Harding had a lot going on inside. She was a tough customer. Also, I have to say, if you were like, who do you think hit Nancy Kerrigan in the leg with a metal pipe, or who do you think orchestrated it? I don't think anybody would be surprised that Tonya Harding had something to do with it. She doesn't look like she comes from the figure skating world, although I'm sure that created a lot of pressure for her, and being an outsider is always very difficult. So I think the performance and whether or not Margot Robbie can have expressions like that convincingly on her face are really where we start to get an idea if this is going to work. Just to give you a little bit more of an idea of the project itself, Sebastian Stan is in it. I'm coming aboard with him as Bucky. I'm finally coming around to him in that role, but I know he has a lot of fans. Not a lot, because his movies don't do particularly well if they're not Marvel movies, but there are Sebastian Stan fans out there. So you guys you should be excited. I think your time is coming. Although I think that Margot Robbie is casting this movie so that nobody has the potential to outshine her, which is very smart, because you might recall that Mark Wahlberg produced The Fighter, and then Christian Bale got the Oscar. It was so frustrating, I'm sure. And Melissa Leo got an Oscar. And Mark Wahlberg's like, this is my Oscar movie. What the hell? So I also think that's one of the reasons you haven't heard who's playing Nancy Kerrigan, because that's going to be a very tricky role. Because if Margot Robbie falters at all, I think, ironically, all the Oscar attention could go to the Nancy Kerrigan actress. And it would be just like Tonya Harding versus Nancy Kerrigan at the Olympics. But I worry that maybe Nancy Kerrigan isn't in the movie, which I think would be a huge flaw, because a big part of the Tonya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan drama was how different they looked. That Nancy Kerrigan looked like your typical figure skater, and Tonya Harding did not. And so that's a very important role. So I'll be curious if they're already filming. I can't believe it hasn't been cast, but they might just be doing some of the preliminary stuff, before she meets Nancy Kerrigan. Who knows? And so they're still working on casting that role. That does happen. They go into production and some roles aren't cast. And maybe it would be easier to get someone to play Nancy Kerrigan after all the coverage that this photo got, right? Being like, hey, this is a hot movie. Now do you want to be in it? And maybe they can get somebody a little better. But I don't know. I don't know if Margot Robbie wants someone really good. Again, she might be trying to build this because she's the producer along with her husband. More on that in a moment, so that the spotlight stays on her. Allison Janney also stars as her mother. It's directed by Craig Gillespie, who did Lars and the Real Girl, one of Ryan Gosling's early breakout movies. He also directed two films that I liked quite a bit, but which did not help his career. Fright Night, the Fright Night remake with Colin Farrell. He did a great job. And then also The Finest Hours, which came out earlier this year with Chris Pine and Casey Affleck. I really highly recommend this film. And also Ben Foster has a small role in it. If you haven't seen it, I really recommend streaming it. It's like an old-fashioned, it's a Disney movie, and it's like an old-fashioned Disney movie to some degree, like, Pollyanna, stuff like that. It's great. I really like that film quite a bit. And so I think he's a very talented director, but I don't know if he has what it takes. But again, I think Margot Robbie wants all the attention. He's good enough to keep this movie in Oscar contention, but she doesn't want anybody else stealing her thunder. And that's a risky strategy, because on the one hand, you don't have anybody stealing your thunder, but if you don't have any other strong contenders, do you hurt your film's awards chances? Her performance just has to be that much better. In the coverage for this, they list her and Tom Ackerley, her husband, as the producers, and the only names from her Lucky Chap Entertainment banner. That's her production company, Lucky Chap. And so I'm really surprised. I hope that relationship is really good, because she is really going all in on her relationship with her husband, both personally and professionally. And that is also risky. Margot Robbie's taking a lot of risks these days. And then also the other producers are the screenwriters. So that shows you how small a production this is, because usually screenwriters wouldn't be major producers on a film, especially because no one's ever heard of these guys. Brian Uncless and Steven Rogers. Steve Rogers, that guy must have a tough time now. But anyway, they're also producing the film along with Margot Robbie and her husband, Tom Ackerley. I will give him the courtesy of saying his name. All right, so anyway, I'm curious, what do you think of the photo? Do you think she can pull this off? How do you think she's constructing the picture? This is definitely a movie to watch, either to soar high or crash and burn. We will see. All right, so speaking of soaring high or crashing and burning, a story that made a lot of people very angry yesterday, but also got a lot of coverage, is that they're remaking White Men Can't Jump, which I thought was hilarious, because just the other day I was talking about Woody Harrelson's career and I left this movie out, and a number of people were like, how could you forget White Men Can't Jump? So that just goes to show you that the film exists in a weird place, where some people really remember it and some people don't remember it at all. So the production is also interesting for a couple of other reasons. So the talent that's attached is Kenya Barris is going to be attached creatively. And he, of course, is the creator of Blackish. And he just signed a movie deal with Fox. And he's also remaking Shaft. A lot of remakes. It's crazy. Too many remakes, actually. I'm all a fan of, remakes and Hollywood and what they need to do. But this is getting a little out of control. So anyway, he's remaking Shaft, and he has a lot of heat right now because Blackish is so well received. And I love Blackish. Great show. Also, it's a very interesting show. Sometimes it's just funny, but sometimes it's also really has a lot of social and political commentary on it, which is also very good social and political commentary. They just did an episode on the election, which I thought was really good. One of the best commentaries I've seen on the election, in fact. So anyway, Kenya Barris is really hot right now in Hollywood. but he's teaming up with two athletes, the NBA's Blake Griffin from the LA Clippers, and then the NFL's a football player and a basketball player making movies together. That's a movie right there. But anyway, the NFL's Ryan Kalil from the Carolina Panthers, they have a production company called Mortal Media, and this is going to be one of their projects. They're basically just remaking movies over there. But hey, if it works for them, we'll see. Now, the original, of course, starred Woody Harrelson and Wesley Snipes as basketball hustlers who at first are at odds and then team up. And then it was also famous for helping put Rosie Perez on the map as Woody Harrelson's girlfriend, who wanted to be on Jeopardy. You know, when you're reminded of that, you're reminded of what an iconic role that was at the time. It's a little bit like James L. Brooks movies back then. You know, like nobody talks about Terms of Endearment anymore. Also a great movie, but it was like a really big deal when it came out. So anyway, Blake Griffin and Ryan Kalil are also doing the Rocketeer remake. That's them, the remake where they're going to have a black female lead take over. So they're big time into Hollywood. That's pretty impressive. And they're right alongside LeBron James, who also has a big Hollywood deal. And he's doing Space Jam 2 and producing TV shows, and he was in Trainwreck. It's crazy. I mean, it used to be that athletes like Michael Jordan and, you occasionally have athletes doing really good, op-eds in the Hollywood Reporter, etc. But they've never been able to cross over to this degree. So to see this kind of crossover in the sports industry, in the movie, television industry, is a very interesting development indeed. And, again, I love it when people go behind the camera, and I love it when they, diversify their portfolios. And this is some major diversification for Blake Griffin and Ryan Kalil. All right, so anyway, the third story of the day, I was so happy. The Catman Dude, the Catman Dude tweeted me yesterday and said, Grace, you called this Seinfeld Netflix deal. And I indeed did, so thank you for remembering that, because I said that when Chris Rock signed his $40 million Netflix deal, I knew there was no way that Jerry Seinfeld would let that stand. Jerry Seinfeld is supposed to be the iconic stand-up comedian. No one commands more money than Jerry Seinfeld. And I've seen Jerry Seinfeld perform in person in Las Vegas, and I will never forget it, because as I've said before, for a moment he dropped his facade and someone said, I love you, Jerry, and he's like, I love you too, baby. And I was like, Jerry Seinfeld doesn't say baby, but he does. So I think that he puts on this very easygoing, nice guy front. That's his character. But I think in real life he's a pretty slick operator, and he wants to be the highest paid stand-up comedian. And now he is. So again, Chris Rock's Netflix deal was worth $40 million, so $20 million for two stand-up specials. But Jerry Seinfeld came in. I think he negotiated hard, and he walked away with a deal get this. It's not been officially released. I think that's probably part of the deal, but it's estimated at being worth $100 million. That's insane. I can't believe Netflix has that much money. And I think, this isn't going to last forever. So I hope people are getting their deals now, because Netflix just can't continue to spend like this. Or can they? But, they're spending $90 million on the Bright movie that David Ayer is directing with, Max Landis wrote with Will Smith and Joel Edgerton. And now they're spending $40 million on Chris Rock, $100 million on Jerry Seinfeld alone, although this is supposed to produce a lot of content. But it's just insane. Although I'm curious, if you don't subscribe to Netflix, is Jerry Seinfeld the straw that breaks the camel's back? Are you going to maybe subscribe now? Here's what you'll get. You will get not only the 59 previous episodes of Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, but 24 new episodes. There will also be 2 exclusive stand-up specials filmed just for Netflix, which I think means that they won't be just like filmed versions of his tour, right? He has a standing show at the Beacon Theater in New York City, which is about once a month. It's impossible to get tickets for it. So I don't think they're going to just film that. I think hopefully he'll have material that's, although since nobody can get in, who knows if it's the same material. But anyway, I've tried to get tickets. It's too difficult. But anyway, I mean, you could pay a ridiculous markup on StubHub, but I'll just watch Jerry Seinfeld on Netflix for the $7 I think they just raised it to $8 that I'm currently paying. So anyway, 2 exclusive stand-up specials, but get this, he's also going to develop scripted and unscripted programming for the streaming giant. So that's amazing. That's really big. So Jerry Seinfeld's back in the game, and Sony just can't catch a break because he left Crackle for this deal. Although they said that his contact at Sony, his buddy, was recently pushed out. So this is a nice revenge for his pal, right? Leaving Sony's Crackle and heading over to Netflix. This is amazing. I already subscribed to Netflix, so I'm just excited. But I can see a lot of people coming over for this. Although they mentioned that Seinfeld is still on Hulu in terms of the streaming rights. That's also a Sony show, by the way, and those streaming rights were sold to Hulu for $160 million. Anybody who worked on Seinfeld, including Larry David, is set for life in terms of money, because every time that thing plays, the residuals alone from it being in syndication are just insane. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. But I'm impressed that in this stage of his career, not really doing anything on a grand scale, Jerry Seinfeld can still get a $100 million check. That's boss. That's the slick guy I saw for a second on stage. All right, so anyway, let's get to today's viewer question. This is from Christian Castro. Hello, saludos, Grace. Saludos, Christian. Question, or maybe a whole video segment. I love Christian. Christian was feeling really, Christian wanted to talk, so that was part of the very charming question. That's part of the reason I picked it. So Christian said, I don't know, you be the judge. Seems like actors are not the selling point these days. Like Chris Pratt, Passengers didn't sell. Although I disagree with you there, Christian. I think that Chris Pratt couldn't sell it in the theater to some degree because of the bad reviews. I don't know if anybody could overcome those reviews. But I think Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence are going to sell this on streaming. But anyway, but I do see your point, Christian. So Christian says, I'd put more examples, but I'm sneaking this in during my working hours. I love it, Christian. Thanks for watching me during work. All right, so anyway, what do you think? What's your top 5 or top 10 actors who are box office steroids? I've used that before with Dwayne Johnson. Or talk to us about actors that really sell movies. Great question. It's tough. I think I agree that movie stars are certainly a dying breed, and they're certainly not, a dependable breed anymore. I think that, you're not guaranteed a big box office return. As I like to say, in the right role, an actor is priceless, but it's still not a slam dunk anymore, necessarily. But I still think there are a couple actors working right now that you can feel pretty darn good about if you have them in your movie. And I've got 3 for you. It's not a top 5 or top 10. I don't think there are maybe a top 5 or top 10. But these are actors where I would feel pretty darn secure having them in my film. So the first is Dwayne Johnson. Dwayne Johnson can really promote a film via social media. He really works hard. Sometimes it's a little hard to control. I think you have to be aware of that. Once you bring Dwayne Johnson on board, he in some ways is co-producing your movie, even if he isn't officially. I think I think DC can't control him, which I feel is a little frustrating. But the guy gets so much attention, you can live with it, right? So Dwayne Johnson is an empire unto himself. So I follow him on Instagram. He's got a clothing line at Under Armour. The guys are actually, I think it might be Reebok. But anyway, I don't know where it is, but I know he has it. But the guy's, he's really, he's also a boss. I'm very impressed with Dwayne Johnson. So I think Dwayne Johnson is a solid bet these days. Also, Leonardo DiCaprio. Leonardo DiCaprio has tremendous appeal. He's one of those rare actors who has a lot of support from the fan community, online, but also mainstream moviegoers who don't always go to the movies. Leonardo DiCaprio is a movie star. And then I have to say, I wanted to add a woman to the list, and I was like, is there anyone? And I picked Scarlett Johansson. I don't think that she's totally guaranteed to be a box office win yet, but if she performs with Ghost in the Shell, she is. I think that's what we're waiting on, because Lucy did very, very well at the box office. And Ghost in the Shell is getting a lot of attention. So if Ghost in the Shell does indeed perform, she'll be 2 for 2 with Lucy and Ghost in the Shell, and she will be a box office star. Legitimately. I know some of you are going to say, oh, she's already been said to be the highest performing actress, at the box office. But just because I don't like when people say, she appeared for about 10 minutes in Civil War, she gets that box office attributed to her. No. The Civil War was not sold on Black Widow. Some people did go to see the movie for her when they polled people, they did exit polling, but that was really Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr.'s movie. I would give it to Sebastian Stan before I gave it to Scarlett Johansson because of the Stucky situation. Either as friends or more than friends, but still that relationship, no matter how you see it, is very crucial to the Captain America movies at this point. So I don't agree that Scarlett Johansson should get credit for the movies that she did in the 2016 box office, but she definitely gets credit for Ghost in the Shell. So let's see what she's capable of, and if she is able to do both Lucy and Ghost in the Shell, it's just going to become more and more conspicuous that she doesn't have a Black Widow movie. It's crazy. It's getting crazy at this point. All right, so anyway, those are my 3 picks. I'm curious, who do you think is dependable at the box office? It's very hard to pick somebody because I'm talking about that odds are better than not that they're going to bring people in. And I think, I agree with you, Christian. There are a lot fewer these days. I wouldn't say they're extinct, but movie stars are definitely an endangered species. All right, that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, Christian's viewer question, and anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.